Our intent was to get this information out sooner, but due to the technology issues that we're experiencing in the district, we were unable to do that. So we appreciate you joining us on such a short notice. Tonight we're going to be reviewing why we're here, talk a little bit about the awareness of the bus driver shortage. We're also going to talk a little bit about the overview of the considerations that we've looked at regarding the bell schedule change. And then most importantly, we're looking for going to talk about some opportunities for you as community members to provide some feedback via an online survey through that will be open through Thursday, June 10th. Next slide, Leanna. Leanna, are you there?
It's me, Rick, and I am moving I'm getting there. I'm taking over momentarily.
Oh, okay. So joining us tonight in our behind the scenes, we have a team of people helping us out. But in addition to me, we have Leanna Albrecht, our public relations director. We have Paul Vigil, our transportation director, and we have Heidi Mahoney, one of our supervisors, and in transportation, as well as Michael Forsythe, one of our transportation planners, and Holly Bokey, one of our public relations people in the community. So who's running the slideshow right now?
Sorry, no, it's Leanne. You want to say it's me?
Hi, it's Leanna.
Oh, is it Leanna? Okay.
You're ready to go, Rick?
Yeah, we should be on the ongoing goal slide just real quickly. Okay, so our ongoing goal in Clover Park for our transportation department is to provide safe, reliable transportation to the Clover Park students and families. And part of this plan is to maintain that goal. The purpose tonight is really to talk about the bus driver shortage. COVID-19 has intensified the ongoing bus driver shortage. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. It's not only a local problem, it's both national and regionally. Clover Park currently is facing a substantial school bus shortage, greater than anything that we had anticipated or have been able to overcome in the past. Despite our driver recruitment efforts and retention efforts, we estimated driver shortfall between 17 and 19 route drivers and an additional sub drivers. The shortage is driving a need for some change. And what we're looking at is some changes to start and end times, which will affect most schools. I want to point out here that we did an efficiency study 2 years ago to really evaluate what our options were with our bus routes to see if we were where we might be able to improve. We contracted with Edgelog, who's our routing software program, as well as First Student, who's a national transportation contractor, to look at our routes. They came back with one recommendation where we could possibly eliminate a route. That was involved in a route that went on Joint Base Lewis McChord. And after they understood the challenges at the gate, they acknowledged that we were doing it as efficient as we could be under the current bell schedule. So moving on down, as we evaluated the challenges that we had, it's really the driver shortage is simply so big that we need to make some changes. Tonight, we're going to share a link for families to provide input on special considerations for the district as we implement any necessary adjustments. Next slide. In the background, you can see a lot of now hiring. It's kind of an effect of what's going on across the Puget Sound area. Just to talk a little bit about the things that we do in Clover Park for retention and recruitment. We provide paid training at $13.50 an hour for driver trainees up to 240 hours. And it takes a variety of hours for each person to get comfortable and be able to pass all the tests that are related to it. We also pay competitive wages. Our starting wage for a school bus driver is $23.54 an hour. We provide health insurance for that employee as well. We also make a contribution to a pension plan for that. So we're doing the things that we need to be competitive and what we can to maintain drivers. Next slide. Again, this is just more little headline things about bus driver shortages out there. Some of the challenges that we have to retain and recruit bus drivers is bus drivers are required to have a commercial driver's license, a Class B driver's license to drive a bus. That license has a lot of value to it to go drive dump trucks and other trucks as well. So sometimes we're training people to choose to go do a different career. It also requires a medical certification every 2 years, and in some cases every year. A bus driver works an average of 6 hours per day, but it's spread out across a 10-hour day, starting at 6:30 a.m. and ending at 4:30 p.m. Bus drivers are also required to subject to federal and drug and alcohol testing. In a state where marijuana is legal, this has resulted in a lot of potential drivers being disqualified since those laws passed over the years. Next slide. Locally, we've been looking at our transportation director's been working with some of the other school districts around the region here to find out what's going on and what their shortages are. Employers throughout the region are recruiting drivers, including not just school districts, but also the contracted services such as First Student and Durham Transportation, as well as Pierce Transit. Recent survey that our transportation director sent out indicates that, as I said, we have 17 to 19 route drivers short. Tacoma operates 2 different programs. One's a contracted service with First Student, and another one is more about their special programs. Their special programs is all they responded to. They need 9 drivers. Puyallup School District, at the time of the question went out, needed 45 drivers for the 21-22 school year, and they indicated they were 10 short to run their summer programs. North Thurston indicated they're 30 to 35 route drivers short, and Franklin Pierce reported 5 route drivers short. The magnitude of the current bus driver shortage requires immediate attention, and that's why we're here tonight. There simply are not enough people interested in being school bus drivers anymore. Next slide. This is just a little history of how our route drivers, the number of routes have consistently been around 83 routes since 2016-17. And we've been able to manage those back in those years fairly well. Once in a while, we'd have mechanics and supervisors driving, and that year that happened to be, we used some contracted services as well. And our mechanics and supervisors drove 500 times. As you can see, the problem becomes more and more each year as we move through 17 and 18. On the right, you see we had 11 substitutes, but we only had 77 route drivers. So we were using mechanics and supervisors to run routes in addition to their regular duties. That year, they drove 983 times. In 2018-19, we had 77 route drivers. And again, we were using supervisors, mechanics, and some contracted services. And it resulted in 1,630 times these people were driving. 1920 came and COVID hit us. We ended up furloughing several of our drivers, not all of them, but several. We had 72 route drivers at the time COVID hit. That furlough resulted as we pulled drivers back. We ended up with 66 route drivers. The number of routes varied as we were going into a hybrid model. Again, drivers and supervisors and mechanics are running routes. As we look to 21-22, if we left the system the way it is, we need 83. We currently have 64. We had 2 more people recently tell us that they weren't returning to drive. So currently we have 2 subs on the books. We're down 17 to 19 route drivers and essentially need around 10 to 15 sub drivers to operate on a regular basis. So what the proposal is our solution is really adjust the number of routes down to what we can actually manage with the staff that we have. Essentially, we're needing 64 to 65 drivers, 2 subs, and we can continue to use drivers and mechanics and supervisors to fill in as necessary until we can fill this gap. Next slide. So alternative considerations that we've looked at, had discussions about, and we'll continue to have discussions about this as we evaluate our needs. Double run buses is certainly an option to where you hold students back and you essentially have two different times you pick up and drop off kids. It works for an emergency situation at times because you hold students back under supervision until they can get buses back to pick them up and take them home. It's not a long-term solution. It's certainly not one that's optimum. It does not provide reliable transportation services to students or families in the Clover Park School District, has supervision challenges at the school and at the bus stop, and it has complications with scheduling. This wasn't what we believe is a good solution for this problem. We also looked at increasing walk distances from the current 1 mile for all grades to 2 miles for high school and 1.5 miles for middle school and elementary. This too does not necessarily provide reliable transportation services to students and families, and it potentially creates some potential safety concerns that such as no safe walk paths, no safe crossing areas where crossing guards might be necessary. There's potential equity challenges, and quite simply, there's insufficient time to really go out and work through all those levels of details that would have to be done in this particular case. We also looked at providing bus passes for Pierce Transit buses to high school students. And this is an option that some school districts use for the older students, and it could be a way to mitigate a few of our challenges, but it's not a system challenge that's big enough to address this shortfall. The other piece that we would normally typically jump to would be we call contractors to cover our routes, which was the first thing that we actually did when we started recognizing the problem. First student who is done a lot of work for us over the years responded respectfully declining our request, citing that they too had bus driver shortages and couldn't guarantee enough drivers for the 21-22 school year. We reached out to Durham as well. They did not give us a formal yes or no. They just simply didn't respond. Next slide. So the proposed changes that we're looking at is a systematic adjustment to school start and end times for the 21-22 school year. This change will reduce the need for 17 to 19 routes. Most importantly, it will provide reliable and safe transportation services to the students and families of the Clover Park School District. It minimizes the disruption to school programs, and it does have a reduction in expenditures of 1.2 million. This isn't like a straight across, you're going to say 1.2 million. It simply is, we won't have that expenditure, but we won't have necessarily the revenues coming in as well. So a quick look at our high schools. Go ahead and go back to that last slide. Next slide. No,
I'm sorry, Rick. Are we going back to the overview side or secondary schools?
you're going to the high school.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're on the right one. So with the high schools, Lakes High School and Clover Park, there is no change to our proposal. They're the schools that start first in the morning and have large number of buses. Secondly, we're looking at adjusting Harrison Prep to align with the other high schools. This includes the middle school students as well. This is an 80-minute adjustment. Next slide. So for our middle schools, they're all in the same bill schedules. We have three middle schools. They're all on the same bill schedule now. There would be a 15-minute adjustment. So they'd be starting at 9 and ending at 3:30. Next slide. The real changes come in our elementary groups. And so there's actually three groups of elementary start times. One group is 8:10 to 2:40. Another group is 8:30 to 3 o'clock. And the next group is 9 o'clock to 3:30. And those changes range from 20 minutes later to 20 minutes earlier, or to as much as 75 minutes later, such as for heroes. So some of these are significant. We really want you to provide us some of your feedback related to the considerations that we need to look at as we move forward with our decision making. Next slide. This is really just a visual of what tiering looks like for school buses. This is a draft. It will certainly change as we move forward. But what you can see is the Clover Park and Lakes each have a large number of buses. Those buses then transfer out to different locations, like Lakes buses go to Idlewild and Lake Louise. And not Beechwood, but then the next tier is Rainier and Meriwether. Some of those buses have to get on base, so it takes them a little longer. So, and then some of those buses end up going to Thomas. So this is a typical 3-tier system where you're utilizing most of your buses at least at 3 locations. Next slide. So what we want to talk now about is an opportunity for input. We put together a survey. This is the link to it that we're asking people to provide feedback through June 10th. This link can be found on your school's website, the district's Facebook and Twitter accounts, email and text. And a copy of this presentation will actually be posted on our website as well, and also a YouTube video. At this point in time, I'm going to ask Paul Vigil and his team to look at the questions in the chat and give us some response to that so we can, you can all hear what some of those questions are that are going on. Paul?
So not too many, excuse me, not too many questions yet. One of the questions was looking at elementaries walking up to 1.5 miles. And yes, we did consider it. As Rick covered in the, when he was on the slide, it was a consideration, but at this time, not an effective solution, as it would take a lot more input from a lot of areas and to create safe walking areas for students, and what areas are safe and not. And that is a much broader conversation than this. So that was a consideration, but not at this time. Another one was, could we switch high school to a later time? That was also a consideration. But at this time, the district has chosen not to move forward with that at this time. It's always in conversation.
Paul, I want to expand a little bit on that. Right now, the challenge that we're dealing with is something that needs immediate attention. It requires, how can we solve the bus driver shortage? Getting into whether we change high school bell times and elementary bell times is really more of a larger conversation that really impacts academic programs, that requires a lot more conversation and research than just what we're trying to do to address an immediate situation. They may all be great ideas and the right solutions down the road. They're simply not, it's not the right time for that conversation, because we have to have a plan going into the fall now, and that needs a lot more conversation. Any other questions, Paul, in there?
No, there were no further questions in the chat.
Any other questions, Paul, in Q&A or chat? Hearing none, I would again remind you, go to the link, fill out the survey, give us back your feedback. It's important to us that we see it. We will be posting the questions. This is our second presentation.
Hey, Rick, we did have some questions that just popped up in the Q&A that we want to touch base with real quick.
Okay, sounds good.
One was, will drivers be working increased contract hours next year? That is a good possibility. The driver's time will increase because they're doing more schools in the morning and the afternoon. How does this impact special needs kids who decide that they're capable of using Pierce Transit? We would never put a student on a Pierce Transit bus that couldn't handle it. And when it comes to special needs, it would be their IEP team making all those decisions.
Right now, we have not, I mean, we don't have plans to put anybody on Pierce Transit buses, so.
And will the new times be put on the district website? They will be put on only if, when that time comes. This presentation should be on YouTube by tomorrow. So if you need to get on there and look at the times again, they would be there. We won't post the new times on the website simply because we do not want to cause any confusion. And that's the last question, right?
Will the times be consistent all year?
Oh yeah, will the times be consistent? Yes, this would be a new consistent bell time schedule. One thing I will say is Clover Park is very good about keeping things consistent and long-term. For instance, the district that I live in changes bell times yearly, and we don't want to do that to people here. We try to keep it as consistent as possible so that we can provide the safe and reliable transportation.
But I do want to be clear that none of this is finalized. There may be some tweaking that goes on. So there might be minor adjustments as we roll this out, but these are pretty close to what we're looking at and should be once the final decision is done. But we're also looking for your feedback in our survey so we can take that into consideration. Anything else, Paul, in the chat? If not, we will wrap it up and encourage people to go give us their feedback via the links.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you.